in this field that the Magna Carta, the Great Charter, was born.
It just doesn't stop around here. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Mark Carney. He does this interview at the Laurie Institute in Australia, drops a casual F-bomb in there, as well as mocks Donald Trump, basically insults his intelligence, takes jabs at him. The arrogance of Carney is unbelievable. We also have another conflict of interest. Let's jump into this. Today we've got Mark Carney in Sydney, Australia, meeting with Canadian and Australian investment leaders, announced a new agreement that will make it easier to invest between our countries. Some more grip and grin, some clapping, some big smiles. With that, Mark Carney sitting down at the Laurie Institute.
What does President Trump's actions, what will that mean for the US role in the world in the long term? Because it does seem that his appetite for using force seems to grow with the eating. And we've seen some remarkable developments really in the last few months, the kidnapping of the Venezuelan dictator, now in conjunction with the Israelis striking at the heart of the Islamic Republic, killing indeed the supreme leader. You might...
The kidnapping. And what was Maduro doing himself? Kidnapping and ending people. So I don't know who this guy is, but we obviously know where he stands.
Think that Maduro and Carney were evil people, but still worry about how this affects America's position in the long run. And I wonder if we could end up in a situation where the US is feared but not trusted or loved.
Do you want me to respond?
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of upside to responding to this question, the way it was framed.
This is
at the back of the...
this is how Q&A works.
Yeah. Exactly. No, it's true. This is an... Look, I'm going to make an adjacent point. And adjacent, it's all relative. It's way over here adjacent. But it's a serious point, which is that in the U.S. use, Chinese use in the case of rare earths, but the U.S. use of integration as leverage, the demand, the use of tariffs to forms of extraterritoriality, not just to have different tariffs, but to dictate or try to dictate policies in countries. It could be in social media, it could be in taxation, it could be cultural policy. I mean, we've seen examples.
That's why I wanted to play this clip. The first thing that comes to his mind there is social media. What I take from this is I don't think he likes it. He doesn't have control over the social media because, well, it's down in America. So he doesn't have control over what gets put up on X. As you're going to see here in a second, almost every post he puts up, I'm fact-checking him with stuff from the Moose chart. I'm sure they don't like that. And obviously it's not just me. There's tons of Canadians posting stuff exposing what he's up to. He doesn't like this. He wants full power and control. That's why he likes China so much. He likes that model where Xi Jinping is the dictator. He wants to be the dictator of Canada.
Of all this, it could be in terms of the current situation as we've seen in the last 24 hours with respect to certain European countries. It's a form, particularly the charging for access to the U.S. market, that form. It's monetizing their hegemony. Said another way, it's monetizing their current indispensable position in a variety of economic relationships, virtually all economic relationships. You can do that for a time, but you can't do that forever. Because the reaction, and we're seeing it start to play out, is people need to diversify. Also need to avoid becoming more tied into to a country, whether it's China in some cases, or Europe, the US, that will then potentially use that against you.
He understands the situation here of America's power over us, but he also understands that because we're so integrated, we have to get a deal, and yet he doesn't want to get a deal because it's good for him in the polls. It's just sickening to see this happening to our country. So we'll jump back to that interview in a minute, but first we'll take a look at this. Carney and Australia are both mining giants. Rio Tinto is one of the largest multinational mining companies. This is Mark Carney posting this on his own account here. Probably one of his staff doing it, but regardless, I met with their chief executive in Sydney today to discuss the future of Canada's mining sector, how we can grow it to create greater security and prosperity. So Mark Carney meeting with the chief executive of Rio Tinto. Well, who's Rio Tinto? It's this entire mess here. We've got Rio Tinto, McKinsey, Dominic Barton, Justin Trudeau, Glencore Tech Resources, and China LCO. So to break this down here, we've got $25 million that came from the Canada Growth Fund, went to Rio Tinto. This happened November 1st, 2025, aka from the Carney government. This isn't from Justin Trudeau. This is from Carney. You see this press release, Canada Growth Fund and Rio Tinto announced transaction action to advance Canada's production of scandium, an important critical mineral. We have this right on the Canada Growth Fund's website. Production of scandium. This one is on October 31st, 2025. We see on the left there. We also have the one right next to it, Rio Tinto to build Canada's largest solar plant to power Divyak mine. The Divyak diamond mine in Canada is one of the largest open pit mines in the world. Rio Tinto will build Canada's largest solar power plant to supply this mine. This is dated back August 10th, 2023. Now, if we look at the connections to Rio Tinto, the biggest glaring one here is this China LCO, which is a state-owned enterprise, which we see as the Aluminum Corporation of China Limited, and China LCO is the largest shareholder in Rio Tinto. China LCO acquired a significant stake, 14.99% of the London arm in Rio Tinto in 2008, equating to 11% overall. Rio Tinto operations in Quebec, BC, Labrador have federal approvals related to emission credits, export permits, indigenous land claims. All this crap is tied together, and Rio Tinto is the world's second largest metals and mining corporation. Its largest shareholder is a Chinese state-owned enterprise. We have this article over here, Tim Hodgson, to accelerate critical mineral project. Canada will accelerate mining projects $6.4 billion as part of Critical Minerals Production Alliance. This October 31st, Canada signed an offtake agreement for scandium and graphite with Australian miner Rio Tinto. You see how this all connected. Rio Tinto, an Australian company getting funded by the Canadian government, by Mark Carney. Largest investor is China. We've got Jacob Strauss-Holm here, former CEO of Rio Tinto, it says in 2025. Barton, as in Dominic Barton here, who's been a chairman of Rio Tinto since 2022, pushed for merger discussions with Glencore. Well, this is where it gets kind of messy. So Glencore here, a Quebec-based mining company and commodities company, acquired Teck's steelmaking coal business in 2024. And Teck Resources here is that other company that PM Carney reportedly pressured Anglo American to relocate its headquarters to Canada as a condition of approving its $53 billion acquisition of Teck. So this is getting complicated, but Anglo American taking over Teck, Carney trying to force their headquarters to stay in Canada. Glencore acquires Teck's steelmaking coal business in 2024. And then we've got Jacob Strauss-Holm here, the former CEO of Rio Tinto, has fallout with Dominic Barton here. The merger discussions with Glencore led to a significant fallout with Rio Tinto's then CEO, Jacob Strauss-Holm. This disagreement contributed to Strauss-Holm's unexpected resignation mid-2025, paving the way for Simon Trott, head of Rio Tinto's iron ore division, to take over as CEO. So something happened between him and Dominic Barton. And Dominic Barton, by the way, as you see here, served as Canada's ambassador to the People's Republic of China from 2019 to 2022, Justin Trudeau's pick. He's a global managing director at McKinsey, which gets hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money from the Liberal government over the past decade. Previous chairman of Teck Resources, I've got the contract up here, $209 million from Justin Trudeau's government. McKinsey also advised governments on mining royalties, which overlap with Barton's later diplomatic role. This is a big cluster here, so it's no surprise why Carney is going and talking to Rio Tinto. Now, Mark Carney isn't invested in Rio Tinto himself, but he doesn't need to be because they help push his net zero agenda here. So he's going to make money off the back end. He doesn't need to make it off the front end. This is still an indirect conflict of interest. While there's a few secondary ties between Rio Tinto and Brookfield, there doesn't need to be ties, but we can go through these. We've got McCarthy Tetrault. By drawing on our top strength in tax competition, antitrust, foreign investment, banking, financial services, etc. And who are their clients? Well, we've got Rio Tinto right there and right underneath Brookfield. So they had shared representation. Rio Tinto partners with Canada to boost critical minerals processing. This is back October 12th, 2022. The government of Canada is investing $222 million over the next 8 years to support these initiatives through its Strategic Innovation Fund, which supports large-scale transformation and collaboration projects that will help position Canada to prosper in the global knowledge-based economy. And what does it say below here? Rio Tinto is committed to being part of net zero future, decarbonizing our operations, yada yada. Rio Tinto is essential for Mark Carney to roll out his net zero agenda, so they don't need to be in business with each other because they need their product. And we've also got Cycle Capital Investments in Arex Energy. Going down here, it talks about Cycle Capital investments in companies developing and commercializing clean technologies and striving to reduce greenhouse gases. If you remember Cycle Capital, that's the one that Stephen Guilbeault has 3 funds that he's invested in. He was receiving passive investments from that it came out. He's pushing a green grift that he was making profits off of. And meanwhile, it says Cycle Capital has a special relationship with its strategic partners, most notably here, Brookfield Renewable Energy, Rio Tinto, Alcan. These companies are all wrapped in together. It's ridiculous. Here we have the receipts of that. Green Slush Fund is just one of the Liberals' 2 big environmental giveaways. Stephen Guilbeault is connected with both of them. So this is back from December 6th, 2024. All this stuff is so corrupt, it should put these guys in jail. As you see, there's not direct connections with Rio Tinto, and there doesn't need to be because they need their product to build solar panels and all these other things that we see here directly helps Mark Carney and Brookfield and the direction they're taking, what they're trying to push on society. And one final note here, this $25 million that Rio Tinto got from the Canada Growth Fund, we'll have that connecting over here to the CGF, the Canada Growth Fund. This is the very same fund that sits underneath the Canada Development Investment Corporation, which is housed, as you see here, none other than Brookfield Place. This government agency is positioned in a Brookfield building, and this same agency here employs only 6 people, which I have listed here. Here's all 6 of them, but its 2024 expenses hit $56.6 million, including $43 million in compensation. This is all so corrupt. It's just absurd. And while we're talking about the Canada Growth Fund, this is the same fund that sent money over to none other than Entropy Carbon Capture, which is in Mark Carney's Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1, the very fund he will be making millions off of. These guys are absolutely ripping us off and just mugging us blind. So stepping away from that tangent here, we're going to take a look at Pierre Poilievre over in the UK. What he's doing over there, it looks really good. The optics are excellent. We've got him here meeting with the UK business community. He's making some good connections there, and he's basically setting up this position where if he gets into power, he can easily just start making deals and start getting wins for Canada. Something else he just did is he went on the Trigonometry podcast, which has 1.7 million subscribers on YouTube. This is a smart move. I think it's time for him to go on Joe Rogan, if that opportunity is still there. As Jen Lyde's pointing out here, consistently ranks in the top 200 global Apple podcast charts. And here's a snippet from that.
The biggest phenomenon in the Western world over the last decade or two has been the total betrayal of the working class, the people who make stuff, fix stuff, move stuff, and build stuff. Their opportunities are absolutely destroyed by massive government interventions that have concentrated wealth among a very small group of well-connected insiders.
You're focusing on the narrow economic part of it, but I think what Francis is alluding to is there's
The same thing.
Well, is it though? Because there's a cultural and ideological dimension to this as well. Because, say, the policy of net zero, which is just economic suicide. It's the same thing. Tell us.
Exactly the same thing, because it's being used as a pretext to concentrate money and power in the hands of the state.
I think this is going to blow. As Jasmine says, it's about time. Let's go. Pierre also posting this video here, the origins of the Magna Carta.
No free man shall be seized or imprisoned, or stripped of his rights or possessions, or outlawed or exiled, or deprived of his standing in any way, nor will we proceed with force against him, or send others to do so, except by the lawful judgment of his equals, or by the law of the land. A reflection of our ancient English liberties into our present-day ideals. Did you ever wonder why the House of Commons is green? Because it first met in the green fields of England. Fields like this one, Runnymede. This was the place that the Anglo-Saxon Assembly, the Witan, met to advise the king. In fact, the name Runnymede means the meadow where counsel is taken. It was the first proto-parliament right here in these hills. And it is in this field that the Magna Carta, the Great Charter, was born. This is the place in June 1215 where barons forced King John to sign the Great Charter. 800 years later, we still look back at this document signed in this place as a turning point in the history of freedom and the rule of law.
This is so interesting here, having the chairs out in the green fields, meeting out in the grass. Interesting how Parliament started. It's funny how Mark never talks about liberties, freedoms, or anything of that nature. I suppose that's not a part of the New World Order surveillance state agenda. With that, we've got Carney being asked on his plan to manage Trump. And what's his response? Arrogance, insulting the guy. I'd say Carney doesn't learn, but well, he's learned very well. He knows exactly how to agitate Trump.
Different partnerships, different coalitions, depending on the issues. And and that creates some redundancy in who are your friends, who's aligned, how costly it is for people to defect from coalitions under pressure from others. I mean, it's a multi-layered. It's not a game, but it's a multi-layered game. If you follow game theory, but that's basically what we're doing.
One person who didn't seem to like your speech to Davos was President Trump. I'm sure that's not because you got a standing O and he didn't.
His was bigger. His standing ovation was bigger. Let's be clear about that. And let's not
Well, that's interesting because that goes to what I want to ask you.
Look at him. He's having a laugh about that. He thinks that funny. Yes, we all know Donald Trump loves to say that things he does are the biggest, the best, etc. His bolsterous speak, we know he does that. It doesn't matter, though. This guy is intentionally trying to piss him off because he wants a majority government, and he doesn't care how many Canadian jobs get lost in the process.
Which is your system for dealing with President Trump. Every leader in the world has to have one.
Yeah.
And we watched your first meeting with President Trump, I think it was 8 days after your election, and the deftness was pretty impressive. I was struck, Mr. Trump was talking about making Canada the 51st state, and he said, I'm a real estate developer. And you look at that artificial line, it doesn't make sense. And you said, Mr. President, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale, like the White House or Buckingham Palace. So you kind of managed your way through there in a way that a lot of other leaders haven't managed to do. So what's your game plan for managing Mr. Trump?
Wow. Okay. Look at the 21 minutes. Let's swing that. Let's stretch this out.
It's time for another adjacent answer.
Exactly. No, the game. But look, I think the first thing is one, respect, but not obsequiousness. Right? He's
Respect. This guy just mocked him on stage, and then he says, "Respect this."
President for a reason. He's had success in other areas. He's eminently, elected twice. You would say elected 3 times. He does, but very successful politician,
He's not saying that in a serious manner. He's taken more shots here, elected 3 times. Obviously, he's talking about the election down there being rigged.
What I find is that he appreciates, particularly in private, being direct and discussing issues and being clear where your position is. So that is crucial. You don't want to. I'm going to say something very obvious, but it's important. You don't want to say anything in public that you can't back up. You might choose your words. One chooses language for the audience, right? I mean, that's true in any circumstance.
It's funny, he admits he's choosing his language for audience. Obviously, you tricked Canadians the first time. Are you going to trick Canadians the second time with the second election? That's the question.
And so you're careful in terms of the language that you use with him, but in a way that's consistent with what you really think. And then it's quite different in private. It's much more. He is more interested in your viewpoint on various things in private, and that creates an ability to work through things. But
Except he hasn't got a deal, so he hasn't worked through anything.
It's not easy, to be clear. It's not easy.
All right, let me ask you about your relationship with another important.
You notice that? When he says it's not easy, he smiles. He wants it to not be easy.
Clear. It's not easy.
All right, let me ask.
This guy knows exactly what he's doing. I don't know if he came up with this game plan or it's one of the Liberal strategists that did it. He knew exactly how to bamboozle Canadians.
Your relationship with another important leader, Xi Jinping. You visited Beijing recently, along with many other Western countries. And when you were there, you said, I think, that Canada's partnership with China sets us up well for the New World Order. Now, I get it. That's risk management. Everybody is, when you have one partner that seems to be erratic and reliable, it makes impeccable sense to deepen your connections with the other hegemon. But what about the risks of dealing with an authoritarian country like China? How do you manage that? Because both Australia and Canada have been subject to tariffs and attempted coercion over the years.
Well, it's interesting. The first time as Prime Minister that I met with President Xi, which was at the APEC summit in November, he chose to spend the first 10 plus minutes discussing how he wanted the personal interaction to be. And if I were to summarize, no surprises. If you really care about something, be clear. Don't lecture me. I mean, he didn't say it this way, but I interpret it. Don't lecture me in public. Bring issues to me directly. Then, there is some recognition. Obviously, the the responsibilities of democratic leaders to be transparent in public, but don't start in public and then try to backfill. So
moving ahead, Carney gets asked about being a prime minister or a central banker and what's the difference. And I just want to point out something at the end here. He talks about setting the agenda in relation to talking to Canada. Where a central banker, it's very structured.
You know, that's the job and the ability to lead and help to set the agenda and catalyze this. And who has more fun?
We'll get to that in a second, but it's just interesting. He says set the agenda. I mean, that's exactly what he's doing because it makes him money. As for more fun here, he's going to tell a 2-minute story and then he casually drops in an F-bomb here. Not sure if he realized he did it when this happened, and just FYI, I'm not going to bleep it out.
Well, boy, the dinners at Basel they were crazy, right? Very good wine. Yeah.
Go on, tell the story. Tell it.
Well, okay, this is a long time ago. In fact, it was 2 weeks into the job at Governor of the Bank of Canada. It's February 2008. And I go there, and Bear Stearns is collapsing. It seemed like a big deal at the time. In retrospect, it was like, there's nothing, but it was a big deal. And we had to decide, because Asia, typical Asia was going to open. And so we go to this dinner, and it's called the G10 Central Banks. So it's the core group of central banks, and Jean-Claude Trichet is the chair. We show up, and we have an hour and a half to make a decision about flooding the system with liquidity or shutting certain things down, et cetera. It was pretty complex, but we're around this dinner table. It's like a 7-course meal. And Trichet spends the first 10 minutes. He welcomes me, which I thought was nice. Mark, welcome. And then he says, we have the best wine in Europe at this dinner. And since it's the best wine in Europe, it's the best wine in the world. And then he goes through the wines. He describes all the wines, tick, tick, tick. And he's like, well, have this one, but, the Pinot Grigio. And I'm like, fuck. And then he finishes it and he says, okay, listen.
So that was it right there. Little soft F-bomb. What's interesting about that is it does shatter his image as being completely buttoned up. I think in reality, his stance on Iran is what's going to affect him in the polls here going forward. Not to mention Pierre's over in the UK. Either way, in the next 2 weeks, I think we're going to see the polls move a lot.
We have, we have an hour. And he says, okay, we have to decide, because the politicians are useless, basically, as he says. And if we don't decide here, all is lost. Ben, what should we do? Anyways, an hour later, all I remember is I'm like, yeah, the wine is fantastic. How much are we on the hook for? But anyways, we got it done. So yeah, the central bankers have a lot more fun. And we're working all the time. No fun, no rest.
Right.
No rest for us.
Well,
look at Forbes' comment here. Nothing says, I'm just a regular guy like recounting a story where he and his central banker buddies are having a private meeting, gorging themselves on expensive food and wine while laughing at the people losing their retirement savings. Very at ease while on vacation, avoiding any scrutiny. Oh, the European wine, best in the world. That's how you sell Canada. He's an elitist making decisions at dinner over fine wine, and you're breaking your back funding it.